Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and visiting me here in my studio today because I'm always happy to share what makes me happy and what I enjoy. And this is what I prepared for you today. It's something that you can use things, in your stash, laying around the house, and also fun as far as trying. I think my dog is scratching right there. Charlotte, you want to stop? That's background noises. Yeah, my dogs kind of interact with me every time I do a video. It's kind of a must. So, another thing that I'm going to be showing you today is once we do this element that I'm going to show you, is take that, make a whole bunch of them, and do what I call repetitive art. And repetitive art is when you take a same element and do it over and over and over again and use it in your art over and over again, just in use different colors or different materials or different sizes. It doesn't matter, but it's this very creative way to try and use your art. So I only have one rule is no rules. Make your own. You can learn about the different rules and different techniques and focal points and the triangles and the circles and whatever everybody is teaching. That's great. It's good to learn and it's good to know, but then take it and do whatever you want. Whatever makes you happy. If I find that if you stick to rules all the time and then you start criticizing yourself, then you're gonna look at it in a different ways and you're gonna worry what everybody else is gonna say or see in it. And that doesn't work with me. Art is about self-expression and enjoyment. You do what you want to do and whatever makes you happy. Don't try to be perfect. So breaking the rules is okay in my classroom. It's fine. Okay. So with that said, I'm going to turn the camera around and we're going to begin. Okay. And then I will see you on the other side after we finish. And hopefully you like it. Okay, so this is a session that I do a lot. Um, Usually, I try to get everything that my thing is beeping. Um, I just grab a whole bunch of things into my drawer. Like this is one drawer that I collected things here. So I have different inks. I have all sorts of fibers with, like ribbons and decorations. This is another bag of different fibers that I have. Some twine, lace, all sorts of embellishments. I have from picket fence here. I have some sequin. I have some gems. This is, I think, crystals, ribbons, inks. I have some fabrics here, leftover some fabrics. And I have a little box with all sorts of beads. So different kind of beads. And what I'm looking for this particular project are actually flat ones, like button-like beads. Like this is good. I have a bunch here. I have some that are metals. I have some that are smaller beads with a flat back. This one. So that's what I'm looking for here. Yeah, I have a round circle. So I'm looking to make circles with these things. So I'm going to put this aside. Second drawer that I pulled, and I have things here. Just a whole bunch of scraps, different scraps of paper, and I try to keep them in small size so that they will fit nicely in my drawer. sometimes I just throw something in here, but basically this is my drawer of scraps. Okay, so one more thing that I pulled that I think is fun is I put some beads, like I said, some flat out beads, and like junk jewelry. So I have a whole lot of different junk jewelry thingies, and I'm going to um, pull these out. So a lot of times when I go thrifting or to the flea market, I'll pick up junk jewelry or different pieces of small metals, and I will take them apart and use those in my art. So you just need a good pair of pliers to pull them apart, and you have fun pieces to use. They usually come off pretty easily. And we have some molds that I use with resin in the molds that we can paint. If you don't have any pieces of resin laying around, if you don't work with resin, then what you can do is use air dry clay to use with impression molds. You roll it into a ball and then you press it against something that has texture in it or different kinds of shape, and it will imprint the shape into the air dry clay. So I already have impression molds in my stash, but again, if you don't have it, you can use anything that you have laying around the house that have a fun shape to it. You can use jewelry, you can use forks, like the forks or the silverware will have imprints on it, whatever you can have laying around the house that will give you an imprint onto the clay. So you just need pieces that are about between half an inch to 1 inch in diameter, not more than that. You're creating sort of buttons with that. Okay? And another technique that is similar to using imprints, because this will get it sort of embossed texture to it. Another technique is to use stamps, is to take the clay. Again, you roll the clay into a little ball. You flatten it on the table to make like little circles. And then choose stamps that have imprints on it that you want to use. And press it against the clay. The air dry clay will take a good day to dry, and I would recommend to wait until it dries. So I just sit around sometimes and make a whole bunch of them and keep them in a drawer until I'm ready to use. So this here is a stamp that I imprinted on, and then you take the rest of them, you let them dry, and then you can paint it. So after I pulled some of the resin buttons and I have some of the clay buttons made and dry, I go to paint them. And I start with, the warm family of colors, and then I'll go to the colder family of colors. I use the paint a little bit wet, and I put more than one color on each button to give it more interest. I don't use just one flat color. And also will give it a different kind of shades on it. First, I paint it in acrylic paints, and then I will add waxes or something else to give it depth. And another way to make those buttons in mold is just to use hot glue gun and pour some of the hot glue into the silicone mold let it dry. It takes a few minutes, pull it out, and you have the impression of the mold on the glue. And then again, all you do is paint it. So now that you're setting up to paint all the buttons that you made from either glue or clay or resin, you want to paint them some in light colors and some in dark colors. And don't use just one tone of a paint of color on the buttons. Use multiple colors and it will give it another interesting dimension to it. So just have fun painting and put them on the side to dry. Here, let me show it to you in close-up so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so I picked up about 20 different pieces of pattern paper that I had in my scrap stash. I keep them in pieces of 3x4. This is just easy for me to keep them in a shoebox at that size. And I'm using a circle punch that is 1.5 inch in diameter. If you don't have a circle punch, you can still just use your small scissors and cut circles out of it. It don't have to be precise. You can use anything that you have to make those circles. From each pattern, I try to have about 3 to 4 circles. So here are all my circles that I cut, and now I want to make petals out of it. Again, I will use my circle punch, the same size that I used to make the circles. And I'm putting them at about, if you divide like a triangle, if you make like a triangle inside the circle, that's about the size petals that you want. So you'll get 3 petals from each circle. Take your time, and I wouldn't do more than one at a time because then it can really get stuck. You can see I'm putting my hand over there so that they're not going to be flying all over the place. So right now I'm cutting from one pattern paper, then I cut 4 circles. I will get 12 petals from that. The next step is take some ink and ink the edges. This is not necessary. It can still look good if you don't have any ink, or you can just use a marker to paint the edges if you want. But I find that it gives it a really nice definition because it'll sort of outline the petals, so the flower will be more defined this way. So I'm just holding the petals and inking each petal separately around the edges a little bit. So in addition to cutting circles from the pattern paper, I also cut circles from heavy cardstock. I use craft color cardstock, and you're going to need one circle that is 1.5 inch in diameter to build the flower on, and one circle that's about 1 inch to build the button on. All the buttons that we're making, we're going to put it on a 1 inch circle. And I went ahead and I inked the edges of those as well. So now it's time to build your flower and put the petal onto the larger circle. I try to make them even. Therefore, I start with 4 sides, and then I put the other petals in between. You can put them in any order that you really want. If you have more than 12 petals, you can even do 2 layers. So it's totally up to you how you want to build your flower. But that's the idea. You put the petals, build the petals around the big circle, and then the smaller circle will go on top of this in the middle. And then in the middle, you're going to build something interesting. So now you want to take the 1-inch circle and build on top of it interesting centers with all sorts of materials that you've collected and you put in your tray. You can take threads, yarns, beads, the clay pieces, glitter, whatever you want. Here is an example of the first center that I made. And you want to glue it right on top at the center. And here's another example of a center that I made, and this one is with one of the clay buttons that I used. So I painted it and I'm adding some rhinestones at the center, and then I'll be adding some embossing to the circle around it. Here I'm just hitting the embossing powder, and it's just another way to create a little bit of interest. The last part of our class today is putting the flowers that we made onto our journal page. So starting with a double layout, and I'm going to paint the background. I usually start with darker shades and I go to lighter. I'm using muted colors in shades of blues and green, very pastel-y, because the flowers themselves are very bright. So I can't have a background that's too busy or too bright, or the flowers will just get lost. So I put the paint directly onto the page, and then I'm taking a wet large brush and I'm spreading the paint around. So I'm doing strokes that are across and up and down. I don't just use one direction. I try to do different directions to have the paint go all around my page. And then I'll take the small brayer and I will roll it over the paint, so it will get rid of the strokes and it will still leave me like stains of paint on my background on the page. And then I start building another layer and another layer. I will add more color here and there where I want it, and use the brayer to mix it up. So next I will add just a very light pastel pink. I don't want to have it too dark, just a little bit of pink over there, and it will get mixed with the green underneath. I'm adding lighter color now. It's ivory white, and it will lighten the entire page a little bit more, and it will still leave me that dark shades of green in the background. I'm going to go ahead and use my dryer to dry the paint, and after it dries, I'm going to pull it closer to you. You can see that when you look at it up close, you have like little crackles, and you can actually see a little bit of texture there in the paint. So it's not a flat paint on the page itself, on the paper. It has a little bit of texture, and I really like that. So this is one of my favorite techniques when I do backgrounds. And it's fast too. It's very, very fast. Okay, then I pulled all of the flowers that I made, and I'm going to play around with composition. You know, I can do a cluster or a repetitive pattern. You can just put them next to each other and it still looks good. You know, so it's the same pattern, the same shape of the same element in different colors and materials. That's what makes it a repetitive art. But I chose on the right side to just bunch them all together and do sort of like a very large cluster of flowers. And on the left side, I'm going to do 3 flowers in a separate way to just add it a little, make it a little more of a picture, if you will. So I'm taking my art glitter glue and I'm giving a very generous amount of glue there at the center of each flower. This art glitter glue really is very good for mixed media. It dries quickly. It doesn't make my paper warp, and it will last a long time. I don't know what I was showing there with the paint. Okay. Oh yes, I was adding colors to make some leaves. So I used, again, the same soft shades of blues and greens, and I added a little bit of brown there. I put on the brush more than one paint at a time, sometimes even 3. And I give long strokes with a dry brush to make some leaves. So I just put 2 or 3 leaves around, not too many, and each of the leaves will have more than one color paint on it. But just spread it around, just do a few here, a few there. I'm not going to do any of the leaves on the right side because it's very busy with the cluster, and I just want to do that double layout with 2 different types of 2 different kinds of art, but it kinds of put it together. Now I took a smaller brush with longer bristles, and I'm making sort of like long strokes to give the stems of the flowers. Kind of did a circle there, and I didn't like it, like on the top there with a little swirly, and I decided to just go back and change it up. Yeah, okay, so I added like little circles there, and it looks like a stem with little flowers, and that's it. I'm going back. I'm adding a few more leaves there until I'm satisfied with how it looks. And I don't want to put too many on the left side. So you can see on the right I have a cluster, and on the left I have flowers. Okay. Next up, I'm using my Stabilo Oil pencil. It's a water soluble pencil, and I'm adding some shading around the flowers. So I'm adding shading on the left here a little bit. And after you use the Stabilo oil and you use the pencil, you add water, and it looks like almost like watercolors a little bit. So just a little bit here and there, not too much, because I don't want the painting to be too dark. But I do want a definition here and there a little bit. So this is what I'm doing. I'm adding a little bit around the center of the flowers, around the petals on the left, and I did the same thing to the flowers on the right. Okay, now I have some extra buttons left, and I decided to just add them over there at the areas that it seemed to be a little bit bare. And I thought having a little more texture on the left would be fun. So I added the buttons, and then I took some more of the wax and I waxed the top of them to add a little bit more definitions to the buttons from the clay. I took my brown ink, and I'm gonna ink all around the edges of my pages to give it a frame, and I'm gonna finish up with a little bit of a title or little saying on my page, and I like to do it by hand sometimes. Sometimes I just print it and put it there, but this time I did it by hand. And that's it. I'm finishing up by taking my marker, and I'm just adding here and there some doodles, some petals, very few, not too much, because the page is already very, very busy. But yeah, a few doodling, and my page is finished. So I think I recorded the whole thing and then I realized I forgot to click the button. It's so typical me. You know, let me paint and create art, but video recording is not my thing. All right, well, that's a wrap for today. I hope you enjoyed the project that I shared with you and that you were able to take something from it, maybe a technique, maybe you got some inspiration, maybe you have an idea in your head running around right now, like, oh, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that. That's what happens to me. And then after a summit like this, I just need about 3 weeks to sit in my desk in my studio and do everything. But whatever things you learn will stay with you. And if you don't use it now, maybe one day it'll pop into your head and you're like, wait a minute, I've seen it somewhere. Let me try it. And then if that happened, then I fulfilled my hope for this summit. And if you happen to do something that, as a consequence of getting inspired by my project today or technique that I shared with you today, I would love it if you would put it in the Facebook group and let me see. All right, well, that's it for today. Again, thank you for taking my class, and I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the summit.